I wanted to talk about creatine for a bit because there seems to be a lot of confusion, a lot of misinformation about creatine at the moment in the supplement industry, and some of that revolves around supplement companies wanting to make more money from their products, and some of it revolves around bro science and rumors that just don't seem to stack up when you look at the evidence for creatine. First off, any any idea that creatine monohydrate especially is unsafe is unfounded. There's hundreds of scientific studies. In fact, creatine is probably the most studied supplement on earth, alongside caffeine, and it's the most proven supplement on earth. In fact, I'd recommend creatine to anybody, regardless of whether you're bodybuilding or just living life. It's an energy supplement, and it's one of the things we make as a in our natural, endogenous system anyway. So it's not poisonous to you. It doesn't cause you any harm. In fact, no one's even found any safety or negative side effects to using it in the long term. So creatine monohydrate, safe. Now, the other thing you'll see is that some supplement companies are even labeling their products as creatine free with this song and dance around it, as if somehow being creatine free is in any way positive. Now, I understand a cutting supplement maybe not wanting to put large doses of creatine in because one of creatine's initial effects is to increase water retention. In fact, you can have a few pounds of water retention just in the first week of creatine dosing, especially if you're loading it, if you're using a loading dose. But I'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, so creatine-free products. There's not much benefit in terms of, again, energy levels would only be improved with creatine, etc., etc. I can only think that a real, true professional bodybuilder wouldn't want creatine the week leading up to a competition because it does cause that water retention. So that said, there really isn't any other reason for creatine monohydrate not to be used by your average gym goer, bodybuilder, strength athlete, anyone really. And one of the other subjects to cover is how to take it. Now, a lot of people will find that it's present in a pre-workout in a gram or two. Now, I'm not sure again why companies do that. I think it's just to show some presence of creatine and to show that they actually include it in their supplements and that they haven't ignored one of the most proven products on the planet or proven substances on the planet for strength and muscle gains. That said, 1 gram of creatine isn't that useful to you. Now, especially in a pre-workout, creatine monohydrate in general is something that saturates your cells. It's something that you build up and you keep topping up in your body, and you keep it at those saturated levels so that at any one point when your body needs to dip into that resource, which is essentially pure energy because it adds to the ATP cycle, which is what all your cells use for energy. At any point when it wants to dip into that reservoir of creatine, it can, and then your dose that following exercise or whatever that day will just top up your levels again. So it's not like beta alanine. Sorry, actually, beta alanine is kind of an accumulation as well, but it's not like caffeine, for instance, where you need to take it within a specific time period of going to the gym, and if you don't use it, then it just sort of gets removed from your system. This actually builds up and it sits in your cells. That's what creatine does. Now, that brings us to the loading dose, or the way to dose creatine. The quickest way to saturate your system is a 5-day loading period where you take 20 grams a day of creatine, maybe in 2 or 3 or even 4 doses, separate servings throughout the day, because massive doses of creatine can cause a bit of stomach upset, just like big doses of any kind of powder can. But taking it in this way, 20 grams a day for the first 5 days, is just a sure way to saturate your system and make sure that reservoir is full. And then after that 5 day period, you could just top it up every day with a 5 or 6 gram top up dose. Now, is loading necessary? No. It increases, it makes that water retention period a little bit larger. It might improve slightly the initial gains in the first week with respect to strength, just because you're saturating your cells that much more quickly. But in reality, it doesn't matter. And a lot of people take 5-6 grams per day as a continuous thing, and ultimately, because you won't really use that every time you work out, or you won't use it every day because you'll have rest days and so on, it will build up to that point of saturation. The last point I want to make about creatine, because this could go on forever, is how many different types there are. Now, there's a lot of new forms of creatine coming out that are sort of bonded to different salts, or creatine malate, creatine hydroxy, all this kind of stuff. But really, when it comes down to it, creatine monohydrate is the one that is absorbed the most. So if you take 5 grams of creatine monohydrate, like 95% of it will be absorbed by the body. Nothing else does this. None of the other forms do it because they're always bonded to something else. Monohydrate is pure creatine, so it's the only one that actually absorbs closest to 100% of what you're taking. And secondly, it's dirt cheap. You can get 6 months of creatine monohydrate for the price of one pre-workout supplement. One of these boutique, Cellucor, Muscle Tech, whatever. So it's cheap as chips. And that kind of rounds us out to the last point, which is why creatine isn't that prevalent as a product in the boutique supplement industry anymore. I mean, most of them do produce a creatine, but they usually mark it up and somehow add something to it to make it sound super awesome. Because bear in mind, super fast absorbing creatine doesn't matter. You just want it to absorb anyway, full stop, and 100, once you've saturated your cells, you can use it. So this whole idea of a pre-workout where you need super fast absorbing creatine, and that's why you should pay $40 for a month's worth of it, is rubbish. Just take creatine every day before when you get up, before you go to bed or whatever, and eventually it will build up. But this lack of profit margin, because creatine monohydrate has been is so mass produced, easily produced, and cheaply produced, that's why you won't find it being touted by the major supplement companies, because it doesn't make them any money. But if you can find it, if you do find creatine monohydrate and it's you think it's a reputable manufacturer, then go for it, because it should be cheap and it works, and it's by far the most successful and most proven bodybuilding, strength, muscle size, energy supplement on the planet.